Hello, everybody. Today we are going to tackle chapter 8 in the book. This one is a great one to kind of get learning about the pen tool. So, first, before we kind of begin jumping into it, we really want to talk about raster versus vector images. So, raster is what is also called as a bitmap. And if you notice, raster is kind of made up of little squares. And vector, on the other hand, is made out of points that create kind of an outline. Now, the biggest difference between vector versus raster is that with a vector, you can pretty much blow it up as big as you need to, whether it be on the side of an airplane or a side of a billboard, and it's never going to lose its resolution. So if we look at this photo here, you can make this bird as big as you want to make it, and it will always look the same. On the other hand, raster or bitmap, which is what this is, will lose its resolution as it gets bigger. And this is very noticeable sometimes when you have a photo that's really maybe not the best quality and you blow it up and you'll see what's called pixelated. And that's really what you're getting right here is these pixels, these squares. Now, if it's small or if there's a high resolution, then that means that there's more of those little squares. And so you won't see that huge difference. But if you tried to take something that was really small and make it as big as, say, a billboard, it would definitely start to lose some quality. So, Photoshop, and a lot of times we're working with photos, and you're working mostly with raster. There is an opportunity to use the vector and to have the points, but most of the time when you're working in Photoshop, you're going to be working with the raster image. But one thing that Photoshop does have is it does have the pen tool, which allows you to use the points and and all of the angles to create what you want to create and really have that sharp looking thing. Most of the time when you're using something that is kind of like a vector, or if you're creating a logo or something of that sort, you're going to use Illustrator most of the time to create something like that. But the nice thing about Adobe products is most of the time you can use things in all of the different programs. Some are just used better for certain things than others. So it's really important to kind of know the difference between these two because they might be used for different things. So by all means, you can read more about that on page 194 in the book. On this one, you can really tell the difference between the pixelated raster versus the vector. And it really does make a difference, especially if you're going to be making something that's much bigger than something else. Okay, so let's move right along. I'm going to go ahead and close those out. So today we have a couple different things that are in our folder. If you have your folders available, I'll show you kind of what we're going to be working on. To begin with, we are going to start with this practice. I've already opened it up. For you can just go File, Open, or you can just drag it right into Photoshop, or you can open it from Bridge, whichever way works easiest for you. So what we're going to do is kind of learn about the pen tool a little bit, and then we're going to create a postcard for Citrus Lane Farms. And we're going to do some neat things with that with the pen tool. So for your practice, this is kind of what we're going to end up with. So we're starting with just this blank sheet and it's going to kind of walk you through how to make all of these shapes. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close that out because that is the end one. And we're going to work on the start one, which is this one right over here. And right off the bat, we're going to go File, and we're going to go Save As. And we're going to say Working. Practice Working. And I'm going to keep it in the same folder that the original one is in. And for this one, I'm going to use my Wacom tablet. I find that it's easier to use. So your pen tool, let's go ahead and find it. Is right here. This is your pen tool, and if you press and hold, you have several different ones that you can choose from. You have anchor point tool, delete anchor point tool, you have a freeform pen tool, and a curvature pen tool. So the way that vectors kind of work is that basically you're dropping a point by clicking, and then wherever you click next is going to be where your next point is. And then it creates a line in between. So you can make your points go all the way around, and if you notice, when I come back to this one, it has a little circle, and what that means is that it's going to close the shape. So then you have a nice shape. You can add anchor points, and that's what these are called. Now the other thing that you can do is if you drop a point, you can click and drag, and as you do, you're going to have these handles, and what these handles do is they're going to kind of create a curve for you. This is called a Bezier curve, and so you can use these to kind of create something that you want. Now, when you're kind of creating these curves, just remember that you want to click and drag. So you're not going to let go of that until you are okay with where you are, and then you'll let go. And at any point you should be able to change that, but that's kind of how you would do it right in the beginning. And I can close that shape right back up. So that's kind of how that works. So if you go over here to the pen tool, we're going to notice that I'm going to go ahead and get my Essentials window hooked back up on my workspace. There's my Essentials. If you click on your pen tool, up here is where all of your tool pieces will be. So over here we know that the tool we're using is our pen tool. We have a choice between a path or a shape. You can make the selection with it. You can mask it, shape it. You can add things together, align them as you like them, or create layers. So there's some really great things there. So what we're going to do is kind of just follow it in the book also. So if you kind of read in the book, they really gives you a great resource as to how to create paths with the pen tool. And kind of where to go with all of those things. So we're going to go ahead and kind of move forward. And first thing we're going to do is it's asking us to draw a straight line. So first things first, it wants us to choose up here a shape. So we're going to do that. Make sure that auto add and delete is added. Align the edges. We want no fill color, but we do want a stroke color. We're going to do 4 points for the stroke width. And I'm just going to type that in there. Okay. And we're going to do the straight line. And then we're going to kind of stick with that. So for the line type, we're going to just use the plain line. And so what we're going to do is we're going to drag out the paths panel, which is this one right over here, so you can see it and the layers panel at the same time. So there are always several different ones that are happening over here. This is the channels, this is your different RGB, and this is your layers panel. So you want to be able to see your layers panel as well as your paths panel. Okay, so on the first shape, which is this one over here, we're going to click on A and click on B. And that should give us our shape. Super duper easy. It's just a straight line. I mean, if you'll notice, that shape is in here, and it also saves into the layers panel. All right, the next one, we're gonna come over here and we're gonna start on A. We're gonna drop a point by clicking. Actually, let's hit escape. Okay, when you're done, you can just hit escape and it'll let the pen tool know to go ahead and leave that point. So we'll leave that point over there. So on this one, we're going to click on A, and then we're going to click on B, but we're also going to pull it to here. So click and hold, and while you're holding it, you're going to drag it and drop it into that right there, and you'll notice that it makes a curve. And then we're going to do the same thing with C. We're going to click on it, and then we're going to drag it into here. And then D. And you'll notice, even though we just dropped D, this curve over here created that curve over there. So it worked out great. So we're going to go ahead and escape out of that one. So you'll just kind of continue to work through them. So on A, we're going to drop our point right over there. Then we're going to click on B and drag it and then let go. That one doesn't quite look right, does it? Let's try that one more time. We're going to click on A and then B and drag. There we go. And then C and drag. And remember, if something doesn't look right, you can always hit Command Z or Edit, Undo. Really, if you learn Command Z, that's probably your best bet. And then it'll just go back and you can redo it. So we're just click and drag, drop it into there. We're going to click on the red dot and pull it to the white dot. Click on the red dot, pull it to the white dot. Click on the red, pull it to the white. And then click on the red. All right, wonderful. So what I did right there was I kind of used the curvature pen tool to move it around a little bit because it just felt like it wasn't quite working out for me there. And you can do that. You can move things around as you need to. Okay, so the next one that we're going to work on is this one over here. So we're going to go back to our pen tool. And we're going to begin over here in A. And these are just going to be straight lines. Oh, These are going to just be straight lines, so we're going to click, 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 click. And then at this point is where the next one that you do, you're going to want to click and you're going to want to drag it all the way to there. On this one, you're going to click on it and drag it all the way and drop it in that one. This one, it's not asking you to drag it because it's already going to be curved over here. So you're just going to click. And then you're going to close your shape by clicking on that. So when you're done with this, I want you to go ahead and save it off as a JPEG and as a PSD and send it to me in both forms. And make sure you save that out. And this one will really help you kind of get used to that pen tool. It'll help you kind of move around and be able to kind of work your way around these vector shapes. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to open up the next part of this project, which when we're done, what we want to do is create this really awesome postcard for Citrus Lane Farms. But as you notice, this middle part right here is yellow. So let's check it out and see what it's asking us to do. So for this one, we're going to open up our start. And as you do, there's two different layers. One is the background layer and one is the path guide. And that's really just this right here, which is going to tell us how to kind of outline this part right over here. So if we look at our book, it's asking us to go and save as. And we're going to save it as our working document. And for our purposes, when you do save this off, make sure you save your last name on there so that I know whose file it is when I download it to look at it. So when you kind of look through your book, make sure that you're following all the steps. I'm going to kind of move through it pretty quickly, but really your book is going to be a great resource for this one. So what we're going to do for this is we're going to come up here and instead of shape, we're going to choose path. And we also still have our paths panel pulled out, and as well as, here it is right here. As well as our layers panel right over here. So this will give you a really great kind of tutorial about how you can compare shapes, paths, and pixels. Make sure you read through that so that you know what you need to be doing. Okay, so for this one, what the book wants us to do is to select the pen tool and then choose path from the tool mode pop-up menu. And then after that, we have path. And so what we're going to do is we're going to begin kind of tracing this part out. So we're going to start on point A. We're going to click. And then we're going to go to point B. And we're going to click and we're going to drag it to here. C, we're going to click and drag it over to here. D, we're going to click and drag. E, click and drag. F, click and drag. G, we're just going to drop that point because this is changing direction now. So we're going to hit H, click and drag. I, click and drag. J, we're just going to click it down there. K is a straight line. L, we're going to click and drag. M, drag and drop. N, And then lastly, we're going to close the path by clicking right here. And if you'll notice, as you click on that, you'll get that little circle around the pen. That's when you know that that shape is closed. Okay, so we have a pretty good shape over here. Looks like we have something weird going on over here though. So what I may just do is go back and fix that. I'm gonna go back and find out what happened here. So we clicked and dragged. Over here we click and we dragged, and then we clicked and dragged. I'm just continuing all the way around. And it feels like you really have to be pretty tight on where it's telling you to go, because otherwise it's not going to look quite right. Now you can use your curvature pen to kind of tidy it up. So that's coming right over here. You can use your curvature pen. And if there's any kind of weird points, you can kind of clean them up a little bit. This feels weird right here, and I'm just gonna zoom in just to make sure. There we go. Okay. Just make sure all your pieces look really, really tight and that there's nothing kind of out wonky. Okay, there we go. Now, when you're done with it, you'll notice that it is now in your paths panel. And so what the book wants us to do now it wants us to convert a path selection to a layer mask. So it wants us to save this off. So we're just going to double click on it, and we're going to save it off as lemon. We're going to say okay. And with this selected, we are going to click on this right over here. And what that's going to do is, it looks like the marching ants. It's going to make it into a selection. So if you kind of hover over it for a minute, it may tell you load path as a selection, load a stroke path with a brush, or fill it. We're going to load it as a selection. All right, now as you'll notice, now you have the marching ants going all the way around it, and so it is now a selection. And so then the next thing you want to do is you want to go over here into your adjustments panel. So we're going to pull this apart. And you may see it as something like this, which is fine. Both work out really great. But what we're going to really focus on is the hue and adjustment. So that's the hue and saturation. That's that one right over there. And it'll go ahead and pop up like this for you. And what you'll also notice is in your panels layer, you will now have a mask that has that selection. And in that selection is where your hue and saturation is going to happen. So what the book wants us to do is it wants us to say hue, which is this first one. And remember, hue is just color. We're going to pull that up to 17. And then it's saying to leave saturation and lightness just the way it is. And if you'll notice, what that does is it kind of creates a lemon look. It changes the color of it. So this is a really great option to change some colors of things. So I I also want to kind of get rid of this guide. So I'm just going to hit the eyeball over here and hide that. And if you notice, there we go. It looks like a great selection. I think that it's really fun with the lemon in the middle. Okay, so the next thing the book wants us to do, and again, I'm moving through this kind of fast, but take your time and really work through all the steps in the book. It's really going to help you understand the pen tool very well and how all of this relates to each other. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this back over here, and it's really easy just to pull it out, and if you want to put it back, you just pull it back in there and it'll go back in there. We're going to go back onto our layers panel. Now what the book wants us to have is it wants us to have our rulers. So you can go to Windows or View, Rulers, and if you notice, it'll show the rulers up here. Now, these rulers look like they're in pixels, and that can be really difficult if you are trying to kind of work on something that's for print. And it really does make it a little bit difficult. So what we want to do is we want to right click on the ruler if you're using Windows, or you can control click if you're using a Mac. Let's see. And what we're going to do is we're going to change it from pixels to inches. And if you notice right away, your ruler changes to inches. And as we kind of move across, you can see where we are on the rulers. You can also use this and drag it, and it'll reset your zeros to the end of the artboard. So if this document is printed off as a postcard, this will be really helpful, especially when it comes to kind of creating guides so that you know that you're not going further than what you need to go. And I'll just show you this. This isn't really part of the book, but this is kind of a fun thing to learn. You can actually create guides that'll show you kind of where to stop. If you put your cursor on your ruler and click and drag, you'll notice that you can put guides pretty much anywhere. So a lot of times the rule of thumb for a printed piece is you don't really want your type to go all the way to the edge. So sometimes people who are doing design are going to use guides to kind of make sure that everything is the same all the way around. So guides can be super helpful to make sure. Now these aren't going to print, they're just for designing purposes. So that's not a part of the lesson, but that's a little tidbit of information that might be helpful. Okay, so the next thing we want to do, and we've done this before, is we're going to create a type. So we're going to go to our type tool, which is right over here. And I'm just going to click. And it wants us to use like a bold or heavy typeface. It looks like it wants Arial bold. So we're going to come over here, as always. Our tool information is going to be right here. So we're going to click on that, and we're going to choose Arial. Arial. And I'm going to choose bold. And it's asking us to use a 55 point. So I'm just going to click right in there and type in 55. Next to the color, it wants us to use white. So if you just click on the color box, I'm just going to pull it all the way up to the white and hit OK. And we're going to type in Citrus Lane Farms. Now when you're done, you can either click on the yes button, or you can just click on the move button. And I'm going to move it down over here. And really, you can create a little better font situation by going to your properties panel. Your properties panel kind of changes depending on what tool you have selected or what thing you have selected. So over here we have, of course, our type selected. If we double click on it, we can come over here and change things up. So what the book is asking us to do is kind of change the tracking. So to change the tracking, you're going to use this number right here, which is VA. And what it wants us to do is to go -25. And if you notice, what this will do is just squeeze everything a little closer to each other. And then the next thing that it wants us to do is to make it all caps. So this panel over here is going to give you everything you need. You're just going to scroll down in that panel, and here's the option for all caps. So there we go. Now I'm going to hit OK, but only because I want to move it a little bit. I'm just going to move it to maybe right there. Okay, it's asking us to leave a little space here just for the graphic. So we're going to go ahead and leave that. I might even pull it a little closer to the edge over here. So the next thing that it wants us to do is it wants us to add a preset shape. So it's asking us to actually have a vector shape. So we're going to go ahead and do that. You can find the shapes in the shapes panel, but if you don't have your shapes panel available, you can just go to Window and go down to Shapes. And this should give you a good array of different shapes that it has. You can import shapes in the future. You can import shapes that you've made. It's pretty versatile. So what it wants us to do is it wants us to go into Flowers, and it wants us to choose this one right here. So I'm going to click on it and drag it, and it wants us to drop it right about there. Now if you notice, it looks a little strange. It's got it doesn't quite look like this, but if you'll notice, it's a vector. So if you make it bigger, it's really not getting pixelated. If you make it smaller, it's really not changing it much. So we're just going to drop it right over there. And then we have some options. Now, if you look, your properties panel has changed because your shape has changed. And so there are a couple of things that the book is asking us to do for this. So let's have a look and see. Okay, the next thing it wants us to do is it wants us to change the fill. And so we're going to go ahead and click on the fill. With this selected, we're going to click on the fill. And it's asking us to choose the yellow. I'm going to choose, it might give us the exact color. It wants us to use the RGB and use the yellow. So we're going to do that. And then on the stroke, it wants us to have no stroke. And let's see what that looks like. That looks pretty good. I like it. And so we're just going to kind of line that up a little bit, however we think works the best. I think that that looks pretty good. I'm going to use the move tool, and that way I can move it around. And there we go. And this is kind of what you want it to look like when you're done. So we have our lemony middle one, we have our Citrus Lane Farms, and our flower. So this is a great start to using the pen tool. Now, what I want you guys to do is I want you to save your working file and save off a JPEG, and make sure to upload those to your Blackboard project. Good luck. If you have any questions, please reach out. I'm happy to help.